Thousands of years ago, humans had no spoons, no forks, and no modern utensils to make eating easy. Whatever food they found, they ate it with their hands. But then, a simple problem appeared. What if the food was too hot to touch? What if it was so thin and watery that you couldn't pick it up with your fingers? And what if it was sitting deep inside a container? Today, we simply grab a spoon and solve the problem. But thousands of years ago, there was no such thing as a spoon. So at some point, an ancient human must have had a simple thought. If my hand can't reach the food, why not make something that can do the job for me? What did that first tool look like? Was it made from wood, bone, or something found in nature? And the biggest question, where did humans even get the idea to make a spoon in the first place? Let's travel thousands of years into the past and uncover the fascinating story of the world's first spoon. Before the spoon. Before the first spoon ever existed, humans had already learned one of the most important skills for survival, using their surroundings to solve problems. Early humans didn't have hardware stores, factories, or specialized tools for every task. If they needed something, they often had to make it themselves. And food created some surprisingly difficult problems. Solid food was easy enough. You could grab it with your hands, tear it apart, and eat it. But liquids were different. Imagine finding a pool of water, broth, or some other liquid food inside a natural container. You couldn't simply pick it up with your fingers. You could try drinking directly from it, but that wasn't always possible. And if the liquid was hot, getting close enough could be dangerous. So humans began looking for another solution. And nature had already provided plenty of possibilities. A large shell could hold liquid. A piece of hollow wood could work like a container. A folded leaf could carry water. And a curved piece of bone could potentially scoop something up. These weren't necessarily spoons in the modern sense, but they introduced an important idea. A curved object could carry food or liquid. And once humans discovered that, the basic concept could be improved. Instead of simply using whatever they found in nature, they could shape an object themselves. They could carve wood. They could shape bone. They could smooth rough edges. They could make the bowl deeper. They could make the handle longer. Little by little, a natural object could become a deliberately designed tool. And this is where the story of the first spoon becomes fascinating. Because there probably wasn't one single moment when someone suddenly invented the perfect spoon. There was no ancient inventor standing in a workshop saying, "Today, I'm going to invent the spoon." The idea likely developed gradually. One person discovered that a shell was useful for scooping. Another shaped a piece of wood. Someone else made it easier to hold. And over generations, simple experiments became more refined tools. But there was another important reason humans began making these objects: control. Using your hands limits what you can do. A spoon gives you reach. It gives you precision. And it lets you handle food without directly touching it. That may sound obvious to us today, but for ancient humans, turning a simple piece of wood or bone into an extension of the hand was a significant technological idea. And once humans learned that tools could extend the abilities of their own bodies, the possibilities became almost endless. A sharp stone could become an extension of the hand. A pointed stick could become an extension of the arm. And a curved object could become an extension of the hand when carrying food or liquid. The spoon was simple, but the idea behind it was much bigger. Humans didn't just find a solution in nature. They learned to turn that solution into a tool. And eventually, archaeologists would find evidence that these simple eating tools had been used by humans thousands of years ago. But what did those earliest spoons actually look like? And what materials did ancient people choose when they made them? To answer that, we need to look at the materials that were available to the earliest tool makers. So, what did the earliest spoons actually look like? They were nothing like the polished metal spoons we use today. Ancient people worked with whatever materials were available around them. Wood was one obvious choice. It was easy to find, relatively easy to shape, and light enough to carry. Bone was another possibility, and in coastal areas, shells could make surprisingly effective scoops. The important part wasn't the material, it was the shape. A curved surface could hold liquid, a handle could make it easier to reach into a container, and suddenly, a simple object could do something the human hand couldn't do very well. Over time, people could make these tools deeper, smoother, stronger, and easier to hold. And that tells us something important about early human technology. The first spoon probably wasn't one single invention created by one person. It was more likely the result of thousands of tiny experiments. Someone used a shell, someone carved a piece of wood, someone shaped bone, and eventually humans learned exactly what shape worked best. But the spoon wasn't only useful for hot or liquid food. It could also help people eat soft foods, scoop ingredients, mix things, and handle food without touching it directly. In other words, the spoon became more than just an eating object. It became a simple extension of the human hand. And once humans discovered how useful that idea was, the spoon was here to stay. But the real importance of the spoon wasn't the object itself. It was the idea behind it. Ancient humans discovered that they didn't always have to use their bodies directly to solve a problem. They could create something that extended what their hands could do. A simple curved piece of wood or bone could reach into a container, scoop up food, and carry it safely to the mouth. And that same idea would appear again and again throughout human history. A tool didn't have to be complicated to be important. Sometimes the simplest inventions solve the most basic problems. The first spoon may have looked primitive compared with what we use today, but it represented something much bigger. Human beings learning to turn an ordinary piece of nature into a useful tool. We may never know exactly who made the first spoon. There was probably no single inventor. Instead, the idea was improved little by little, generation after generation. And eventually, that simple concept became something almost every culture developed in its own way. So the next time you pick up a spoon, remember, you're holding an idea that began thousands of years ago, when humans first realized that a simple tool could do what their hands could not. A small invention, born from a very simple problem. If you enjoyed this journey into the hidden history of everyday inventions, like the video, share it with someone who loves history, and subscribe for more fascinating stories from the ancient world. And tell us in the comments, what everyday invention should we explore next?